This is B2B Enablement, a Klyck.io podcast created to inspire sales and marketing leaders navigating digital transformation. I'm your host, Dave Carr, and on this show, we'll share actionable insights to build winning digital strategies and deliver better sales results with your customers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 9 of B2B Enablement. And today I am joined by Sam Shepler, who is the CEO of Testimonial Hero. And today we're going to dive into a pretty interesting topic. We're going to talk about how to use customer testimonials to close more deals and build brand. And I think Sam has got a really interesting insight on this. His company does a great job of storytelling through customers. So I'm going to let Sam give a really quick intro of himself, and then we're going to hop right into the topic.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. My name's Sam Shepler. I am the founder of Testimonial Hero. Testimonial Hero is a video testimonial creation service for B2B marketing leaders. We produce video testimonials all over the world, both in person and also increasingly remotely. And really, our mission is to help B2B marketing leaders drive greater results by better communicating their value through the voice of the customer.
Well, Sam, I'm really personally excited about this conversation because, I think one thing that we try to talk about so much on this show is the connectivity between sales and marketing. And I think that getting into this topic today, we're going to hit a lot of relevant points on sort of both sides of the fence and how we can really talk about tools to bring the two functions together in the storytelling aspect of that. I think that's so important. So just to hop sort of right into the concept, can you give us a little bit of insight on why do video testimonials really matter for B2B revenue teams, and how does that function really bring together sales and marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's a couple things. The core of it, however, is that, prospects want to hear from other prospects in the buying process, right? Generally speaking, people are skeptical of claims that we make, but they're much more interested in, hearing from their peers. There was actually a study from Gartner recently that said just 9% of B2B buyers rate vendor content. So, content that us as, sales and marketing professionals are putting out, just 9% of B2B buyers rate vendor content as trustworthy. So that's obviously a problem if we're,
right.
If we need to build trust, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So it's the long and the short of it is that, harnessing customer voice and just conveying your value and differentiation through the voice of the customer is just very effective, and prospects respond very well to it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And in a world where everything revolves around social validation, it's just a much better way to tell your value story rather than through your own mouth, but rather the mouths of the customers that you've helped to be successful. Can you talk a little more about how those testimonials, how they're valuable for the marketing side of the organization and then also the sales side? And if you have any examples of successful results from your own clients, could you give us just a couple of ideas around where you've seen video testimonials work really well?
Absolutely. So I think, one of the things that we hear a lot from our customers is that on the marketing side and also on the sales side is just simply that, these video testimonials reduce friction. So, they reduce friction at, basically wherever you use them. But, whether that's a landing page and you need to drive more conversions, or, on the sales side, if you're using them in, one-to-one cold email, or on the marketing side, again, if you're adding them into your email nurture, or, even having a 15-second version of them for paid ads. So typically, what our customers do, and what specifically, what we never just make one version of a video testimonial for our customers. We always are making multiple versions throughout the buyer journey. So we, at minimum, I would suggest, is a 90-second version is like a standard version, a 30-second version for social, when people just generally have a shorter attention span. They're just quickly scrolling through a feed. And then a 15-second version for, digital paid ads. So really, it's all about, building trust with new prospects faster, and, increasing credibility, and, reducing friction, and thereby, just kind of accelerating that buyer journey.
It's really interesting that you bring up friction. And, one thing I harp on a lot from a marketing perspective is knowing your customer journey and knowing where your gaps are and how you're filling in storytelling, brand building, et cetera, to fill in those gaps. So I think it's really interesting that you talk about that. Can you give us maybe even a little more insight on, like, what are those friction points that you see a lot of times, and where do you see those testimonials really coming into play? And is it early in the sales cycle? Is it in the middle? Is it at the end? Is it all three?
I love this question because it's sort of also talks about like there's this preconception, a couple years ago, especially, that customer content, so any sort of customer voice content, was strictly for the end of the marketing funnel, end of the sales funnel, right? So if you look at, if you just Google like how to use case studies, right, you'll see something that says like case studies are for the end of the funnel. Now, maybe that's true, because with a boring written PDF case study, the only way you're going to get someone to read that is if they've already, engaged a lot with your brand. But the fact of the matter is, injecting customer voice into your buyer journey is for all stages, right? There's never a time when a customer, we're all buyers too, right? There's never a time where we don't want to hear from other customers. It's just that the format needs to change, right? So, in generally speaking, the earlier in the buyer journey, it of course needs to be shorter and a little bit, more concise, easier to consume. So, to get back to your, original question of like, a really, classic use case is, all right, we're going to use these, video testimonials or video case studies to really push people, over the, over the line in those final stages of a sales process. So that's like a very classic use. And it still, obviously works great. But more and more, it's really any time that you need someone to take an action is how I see it. So we use them, and our clients use them in cold email. To get someone to respond to a cold email, that's about as early in the buyer journey as you can get, right? You're reaching out to someone who, maybe hasn't even heard of you. So we use them there. We use a shorter, more high level, version there. Or, conversions on landing pages. If you're having, test out, what are your conversions before, add, 3 short video testimonials to your landing page. And, I think you're going to, like the results.
The whole concept of using them in email is a new one for me. And I think that that's really interesting. I like how you talked about earlier, sort of taking the 15-second for ads, the 30-second for other touch points, the 90-second if it's a sales touch point. But I agree with you, Sam. I think that telling the customer story during every stage can be powerful. And I certainly do think it grabs attention. In my business, first of all, with sales enablement, we're all about how do you take content and empower that for salespeople to use it. So I think when you're looking at things like video testimonials, that's a fantastic way to equip a salesperson, an SDR, et cetera, to have social validation proof to lead that discussion with their customer. But also I see it work a lot in the front of the funnel too, right? And, now granted, we haven't focused as heavily on customer testimonials ourselves, but video in general and relaying results that you've created with other clients is a fantastic way, even in like LinkedIn, right? So if you're scrolling through the feed and you see that and it snaps you out and it can engage you. So I think all of those are really fantastic ways to weave it in. I guess that kind of goes to the next big question, which is, if social validation and video testimonials are so important, why aren't more people using them? And what's the challenge that's really keeping that from becoming more popular?
Yeah, that's that's a great question. And it's a couple things, right? So, for one, a lot of times, no one's putting their hand up to be featured in a video testimonial, right? On our customer side. So a lot of times, as marketers, we don't actually know who the best candidates would be, and it's not, sales isn't, typically, rewarded for surfacing those, and customer success isn't typically rewarded either. However, that's actually changing, and we'll get to that. But basically, yeah, challenge one is like, no one's putting their hand up. So how do we identify them? Couple quick tips on this. First of all, if you're on the marketing side, who would make a great testimonial? Obviously a bigger name, that's going to carry clout, but you also want someone who's really seen a lot of success with your product. So talking to sales can help you understand some of the bigger names, and talking to customer success or account management, however it's termed at your organization, can help you figure out who are the customers who would actually be able to it'd be a good candidate for this. Another quick tip is, it's also important that, you have sort of create a mind shift in your organization with customer success, that like, this is an opportunity for customer success to actually build a deeper relationship with the customer, right? Because, customer success is, motivated and incentivized by driving renewals. The last thing you want to do when you're asking your customer success team to round up a happy customer is make them think that, oh, this is just gonna be a hassle, right? So you really want to help the customer success team understand, when you make that ask, that this is something that we're holding up this customer as an example of best practices in their industry. It's going to be an awesome experience. It's going to be a huge career PR move for the individual that we're, featuring on video. It's going to make them look great in their industry. And, in the process of doing this, you as the account manager, we're going to build a greater relationship with the customer. So step one is actually, on the, as marketers, since that's typically, who kind of owns it. It's like talking to sales and talking to customer success.
Well, and I like your point that you made around no one's raising their hand, because you're right. I mean, anytime you ask a client to do something, it's always immediately sort of puts people on defense, right? Well, what do you want from me? What's in this for you? But I agree. I think that the nice balance is that for individuals, and especially people in, executive leadership roles, I mean, everyone wants to showcase their achievements, right? So giving people the opportunity to use your company as a platform to talk about what they've accomplished, I think that's a great way to lean into that. So assuming that our listeners want to start taking some next steps, how would they go about solving some of the challenges? And I think you already touched on a couple of ways to address, apprehension, but how else should they go about making a video testimonial? How does your company handle that? What are some things they should keep in mind? And what does that journey look like once they've made the decision to go this route?
Yeah, absolutely. And, so we are definitely seeing more and more companies, especially, larger companies, hire full-time, videographers, something that, wasn't, quite as common, 5 years ago, but is becoming, more common. So, maybe, you have the resources already with an in-house videographer, and you can simply, prioritize, that with your in-house resources. If you don't have those in-house resources, you could also take a little bit more of a DIY approach, and effectively, do something as simple as recording a Zoom call and doing some simple editing of it on yourself, by yourself. Obviously, that's not going to get you obviously editing just a Zoom call isn't going to get you a show-stopping result, but it's absolutely a viable tactic if you want to just do something rough and ready. The other, option, of course, is to actually work with, a partner on it. In terms of, us, that's obviously, what we do. That's the only thing we do. We're 100% focused on it. And, we really have two different modalities that we work in. And, the first is the on-site. So where we're actually going, we're filming at a testimonial from a client at a client's office, or if they work from home, we often find a co-working space to film in, so we still get that nice business background, even when people are increasingly working remotely, right? And that's also like the highest quality, in having a real production crew there is always going to, get the highest quality. So the other, really option is, if we want to do it remotely, or have to do it remotely, how can we still get the best quality? One, the way that we've solved this problem, which, I wouldn't necessarily recommend unless you are a videography expert, because it is a little complicated, is, what we do is we actually interview your customer over a video call. But before that, we coach them on how to set up their own personal device, their iPhone or Android, to actually record the video testimonial on their phone. The reason that we do this is because it's about 4 times the quality for both audio and video when you're recording on your phone as compared to your webcam, right? Not only are you not dealing with any bandwidth issues, the quality of cameras that are coming out, on all of our phones these days they're just insane, right?
It is crazy.
The cameras are just so good. So basically that's how we handle it in the remote setting. And that's, the kind of the trick is that, you can have the conversation with your customer via, just like you normally would via Zoom or Google Meet. But then we actually, capture it and over the phone, before the call, we help them set it up correctly, make sure the lighting and the audio is good. So that is what I would recommend if you want the highest quality remote result.
There's a couple of really interesting things that you touched on there. Number one, the idea of just getting started and not having to commit yourself to say, hey, I'm going to make a Hollywood production. One of the things I talk about so much is just, 1 is greater than 0, right? So like if the option is to do nothing or to do something that's even, not, I don't want to say subpar, but it's not going to be the super fancy result, it's still good to do something. And I agree, especially in the world of post-COVID, people are so used to Zoom calls and they're so used to things that are not necessarily overproduced. I mean, if you look at Disney, I have a 5-year-old daughter and we watch, where they do the Dancing with the Stars kind of thing at people's houses. And it's just, it's shot on people's cell phones. I think it was episode 5 that we did in this podcast. I had a guy named Drew Franklin on from Altec, and we talked about video marketing. And one of the things that we harped on extensively was the modern iPhone camera is just incredible. And the things that you can do with it, it's just mind blowing, the amount of quality production. So I agree. I think just getting people to think about how do you take that first step do you try that out a couple of times and then move to professional production? It's just all about a journey, not one single event. On the topic of COVID, have you guys seen any sort of big changes in the way that you're having to handle customer testimonials, with people not wanting to go into office spaces or, have contactless type meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, piggyback on your point about, getting started, in just a rough and ready manner, 100% agree. And one of the obstacles there can be, what questions do I ask my customer, right?
Yeah.
So we actually have a free resource on our site. It's called the 15 Ultimate B2B Video Testimonial Interview Questions. It's like a templatized thing. You just kind of plug in your company into it. So yeah, that I would just recommend. Feel free to check that out. It's on our website. And basically it's on our website, which is testimonialhero.com. You can check it out. And then if you want to use it in your own interviews, feel free.
I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay, perfect. And in terms of, the changes that we've seen with COVID, for sure, we're definitely doing many, many more remote only testimonials. That being said, we are definitely, still filming, less, but still a significant number of on-site in-person productions that, of course, we've switched to a total contactless model. And, people have to physically distance at all times, which is actually, not that hard because, we're using boom mics. We're not, using lapel mics to mic people up, so we don't have to touch them. The cameras, we're standing 6 feet away. So the hard part isn't actually the filming. It's the fact that offices are closed, right?
Yeah.
So then where do you film? The filming can be done safely. It's just that the location, often isn't as available. So what we've done is we've switched to filming more in, rented conference room spaces or, co-working spaces that we can sort of dress up and have a nice background when, the office might just be completely closed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just in ways to work around. And again, getting back to that, sort of down and dirty way to accomplish it, still, even if it's Zoom meetings, I think that, doing something is better than doing nothing for sure. Well, as we kind of think about sort of wrapping up in some key points here, are there any other tips that you would give listeners who may be interested in getting started with testimonials?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of the challenge is just getting people to agree initially. And also getting comfortable asking for them, asking for, that testimonial appearance. And it can seem kind of complex if you've never done it before. So therefore it's easy to procrastinate. So maybe I can just share like a couple kind of tips and observations that can kind of help people feel more comfortable asking for the testimonial and just make it generally easier to get that yes. So the first thing I would say is, one great strategy is to actually build the ask for a video testimonial into the initial sales agreement. So there's a couple different ways to do this. One, generally, is it could just be there by default. We have a lot of clients now that, try to sneak it in. That being said, it can certainly be the first thing that gets redlined, particularly if you're working with a big company. But if you're already giving them a discount and you include pending satisfaction, company X will give us a video testimonial. That is basically by far the easiest way is start the sort of the expectation early. And you don't have to make it such that, you're holding them to it. It can just be pending satisfaction, right? Because obviously, in the rare case that they didn't see success with your product, you're not going to ask them for a testimonial, right? So just kind of building it in. The other thing that actually we do a lot is we use the testimonial ask as a sort of a bargaining card to play during the sales process. So we don't include it by default, but if a prospect is, kind of pushing back on price and, we have room to negotiate and, we really, want to push the deal over the line, when they ask us for that, extra, percentage points off, we'll say, look, all right, like we can agree to that if you're willing to appear and do a video testimonial pending, satisfaction, of course. Then, they're happy that they got the discount, and, we've already started the conversation. We've already got the, kind of casual agreement to appear in that video testimonial. So, so that's one big thing is, thinking about building it, or at least, the expectation of it into your sales contracts pending satisfaction.
That is an extremely valid point. And I can tell you from personal experience, I am currently navigating those waters on the back side of that with a client that we did not have an agreement with coming in contractually. And especially if it is a large enterprise global company, that can be a big challenge because then you have to have, legal documents written up and it can be a little bit of red tape to cut through. So I think that all those are very good points. So thanks for sharing those, Sam. As we get ready to wind down here, if you're a listener to my podcast, you know that I always try to focus on some big key takeaways. So not only getting you conceptual knowledge and information on this podcast, but things that you can actually go back to work with today and start to put to work. So Sam, if you were to boil down and just maybe share 3 big key concepts and takeaways with our listeners, what would you want people to walk away from this podcast knowing?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that the first thing that I would say is, take a look at your buyer journey, do a gap analysis and, figure out, where's the friction? Are we, having, a lot of people that are just kind of stalling in this stage, or, whatever it is, try to figure out, where is friction being created and, knowing what we know, which is that customers want to hear from other customers and they especially prefer in video format. Knowing what we know, how can we leverage customer voice to just really convey value and, push through those friction points in the buyer journey. So just taking a look at it, doing a little bit of analysis and, figuring out where the gaps are and then injecting customer voice into those areas. Another key takeaway, I think, would be, if you're in, if you're in marketing, talk to sales and customer success. If you're in sales, talk to marketing. And say, hey, make it a priority, because that's actually a lot of our customers come to us because their sales team and their salespeople are saying, hey, we need, you want us, if we're going to be selling more, we need better assets, and the best assets are, real customers on video and video testimonials. So if you're on the sales side, ask for these type of assets from your marketing team, and if you're getting asked for them on the marketing side, ask your customer success team who the best customers to feature are. And I think a more high level takeaway for the third one, again, knowing what we know, that B2B buyers are increasingly becoming skeptical of vendor content. With that in mind, doing a little bit of a brand audit or a messaging audit and asking yourself, for the claims that we're making, for the messages that we're trying to convey, are we just, kind of spouting that from our point of view and, really kind of pushing that out to the market? Or do we also have the voice of the customer, in that story? Just again, because, especially for a brand, one thing we hear a a lot now is like, from our customers is like one of the most surprising things was how much these video testimonials helped our brand. So I think, the third one is just kind of thinking about, messaging and making sure you have, you're injecting that customer voice into, to support your most important messages.
All of those are extremely solid takeaways. One thing I'll say just in wrap up here, conceptually, we started out this podcast talking a bit around how sales and marketing can come together through activities like this. And I just want to reiterate how important things like customer testimonials are becoming throughout that cycle. And again, we talked about, from an ad, from, a touch point that someone gets in an email, to a conversation that's being backed up from sales with good content. That's just so important. And from the lens of sales enablement, which my company Klyck.io focuses on, customer testimonial type of content is just, it's gold in terms of what you can share. And if you're using a sales enablement system to go along with your sales enablement process, you really should be thinking about all the ways that you can tie in customer testimonials, customer case studies, customer validation points, data points of success from other customers, because that is such an important part of the modern sales cycle. And exactly as you said, Sam, it's your customers telling the story, not necessarily your sales and marketing people trying to beat that drum.
100%. And one other thing in terms of even being more specific around like, video testimonials is that I think one of the problems with written testimonials or written case studies is that, in B2B, we all kind of, know that often the marketing team, kind of writes the written quote and they get the prospect to sign off on it. Right. And like, it's not like they wouldn't have signed off on it if they, or they get the customer to sign off on it rather, but it's not like the customer would have signed off on it if they didn't agree with it, but it's still not exactly, always their words, right? Mm-hmm. There's a bit of like back and forth, but when you get a real customer on video, and even if you don't watch the video as a prospect, the fact that a customer is willing to step on video, put their reputation on the line, and, put their face in front of, your brand, that just speaks volumes in terms of like the level of trust that, a purely written assets, don't quite have as compared to video.
The power of video is just massive. I could not agree more. Well, this is a really fun topic. I really appreciate you joining the podcast. I know that listeners are going to be able to take a lot of good things away from this. I know I did. If you're listening, if you have not done so already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you find the topics interesting. If you've listened to this or a couple of others and you found the content valuable, also give us a good rating. That helps others find us. And in the show notes, I will put links to Sam's LinkedIn profile if you'd like to reach out to him or get in touch. Also put links to his company, Testimonial Hero, as well as a number of other resources. I know, Sam, you mentioned that checklist that you've got that interested parties could use to kind of shape their journey on testimonials. So all that'll be in the show notes. You can check it out there. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to have you back with us again next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. It was a blast. Thanks for having me on.